The first 1,300 PP play should have happened a long time ago. There were 93 days between the first 1K and the first 1.1K. There were 147 days between the first 1.1K and the first 1.2K. There were 988 days between the first 1.2K and 1.3K play. It's the longest any PP barrier has ever stood. So what happened? This is the history of the first 1,300 PP play. But first, a word from our sponsor. Okay, let's say you're sat down at your computer playing Osu and you look at your play count. Oh no. And then you look down at your hands. Oh no. It sounds like you need a break from Osu. And oh boy, do I have the game for you. Raid Shadow Legend. Raid is probably the best mobile game I've ever played. The graphics are incredible. They're so good that I can run it on my computer without feeling like an insane person. And today I'd like to tell you about the Doom Tower. This supermassive tower is basically a giant prison where bad guys are locked up. To climb to the top, you're going to need an army of and a couple of bosses need specific mechanics to beat them, like the Scarab King, who barely takes any damage unless you reduce his max HP. And if you attack him without a shield buff, he'll destroy your team so fast. There's also a Christmas event prepared for new players. If you download Raid with the link below and go to the website and enter your player ID to take part of the 12 days of Raid, you can win amazing prizes, like Raid Champs or even Amazon gift cards worth up to $1,000. Raid is constantly introducing new content, like the new system of Artifact Ascension, which you can get by battling through the Sand Devil's Necropolis in order to earn oil, which can make your articles ascend. Raid's got something extra special happening now, as they've released a champion based off legendary MMA fighter Ronda Rousey. And you can get Ronda for free right now by just playing Raid for 7 days in between now and February 20th. You can also use promo code RAIDRONDA to get a bunch of helpful stuff for leveling up your Ronda, so that she's at the top of her game. And if you haven't started playing Raid yet, click my link in the description or scan my QR code here on screen. You'll get unique bonuses worth $30. That's a free epic champion, 200k in silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, and an ancient shard. All of this just here. So, download Raid. The first 1,200 PP play was achieved by FG Sky on the 5th of March 2020. Throughout the past months, he'd taken 4-mod farming to its extreme, putting in over 3,000 attempts on just Ice. It's an absurdly impressive score. But at the same time, it's obvious that he used flashlight memorization as a crutch to achieve PP values far beyond what a player of his skill level should have been able to. The next to join the 1.2k PP club was Badu, when he FC'd C-Type on November 6th with double time flashlight and hard rock for 1,289 PP. This score is nuts. It's probably the only time a PP record will ever be on a circle size 8 map. But again, this play uses flashlight memorization to gain far more PP than would typically be possible for a player of Badu's skill level. Especially since this play exploited a flaw in PP calculations. Since flashlight PP doesn't take into account stacks, so despite a third of the objects in the map being in one place, he lost no PP. Both of these plays illuminated a problem. Flashlight was broken. Only a bit for people playing normally, but a lot for those getting the PP record. And this mainly came down to 3 things. First, AR and flashlight bonuses stacking. Basically, when playing anything above AR 10.3 or below AR 8, players are given a PP bonus. And when using flashlight, that bonus was combined with the base flashlight bonus. The thing is that by the time either of these players were able to farm the maps they were playing, they had memorized them. So the difficulty of reading AR11 was a much smaller factor than it would have been using no mod. Second is the stacking issue I already mentioned when talking about Badu's play, but it also affected FG Skies, because Fiery's jumps are stacked during the diff spike, making them far easier to memorize. Last, there was a difficulty spike problem, since flashlight rewards more PP the higher the object count on a map. The problem is that it would give the same amount of PP to a 1,000 object map with an 8-star diff spike as to a map with a consistent 8-star difficulty, which makes absolutely no sense, as it's far harder to memorize a consistent 8-star map. This didn't affect FG Skies or Badu's plays that much, but it's going to be pretty important later. Okay, so about 2 months after Badu's 1.2k, there was a PP change. But it didn't really address any of these flashlight issues. What it did do though was nerf short AR-11 maps and misses on short maps. Both of these plays were less than a minute long, and so they both got nerfed pretty badly. After the rework, neither was worth 1.2k anymore, with Murami's 1.1k on Moe Kai becoming a new PP record. By this point, FG Sky had stopped playing 4mod, and Badu wasn't farming C-Type, so there were only 3 players who could realistically break the record. Murami, Whitecat, and Emrek. The number 1, 2, and 3 players at the time. The thing is, Whitecat was barely farming, and the list of doable speed 1.2ks looked like this. For context, speed was worth nothing until the general PP rebalance in 2019, so no one had really made speed farm maps up to that point. That left Emrek, who had been improving at an inhuman rate, but hit a plateau at the 1k PP mark. And because of this, it was hard to imagine that there would be a new PP record anytime soon. Oh, yeah. Jopab would set the first 1.2k PP play, just 2 months after the rework, with his double-time flashlight FC on Union. This might be the most unexpected PP record ever. It was worth a full 500 PP more than his next highest play, and he'd only ever achieved 900 PP on the map before this point. And the play is absurd. It's the best miscount by 30, and it absolutely deserved to be worth a lot. But again, it exploits a problem with flashlight. It's a high object map with just a few diff spikes, many of which are comprised of overlaps and repeat angles. After this play, it again seemed unlikely that anyone else could set a 1.2k, and especially unlikely that anyone could beat Jopab's record. But just below the surface, something was starting to change. During the time between the last PP change and Jopab's record, Emrek had played a ton, and through sheer quantity of 1000 PP scores, he had taken the number 1 spot. The thing is, he still couldn't get past 1000 PP. But during the 2 months after Jopab's record, something started to change. He got his first 1.1k PP play, and then just a month after that, he got a Sunglow 3-mod play worth 1250 PP. And following that, a 1.2k on Euphorium, and was close to a 3rd on Team Magma. There are so many reasons these plays set Emrek apart from everyone else at the time. The most obvious was that he was the first person to ever achieve 1200 without flashlight. But the manner he did it in was also really unconventional. Sunglow especially stands out because before this point it was seen as almost impossible to play 3-mod on a full-size map anywhere near this difficulty. Part of the reason is how hard it is to read AR-11 for 3 minutes, but there are other players who can do that. What was really shocking was the aim consistency needed to play 270 BPM CS5 jumps on a map like this. It was something no aim player had ever done. Then, within a week of these plays, there was a PP rework that would nerf Jopab's Union score and give Emrek the PP record. This change decreased the amount of PP a single difficulty spike could give, and actually fixed one of the main issues with Flashlight, by making the game's high approach rate and flashlight bonuses mutually exclusive. This reduced the viability of flashlight DT, because to some extent every play using this combination abused this multiplier. But it barely affected Emrek's top plays, with Sunglow and Euphorium both being worth 1.2k still. His massive skill jump coupled with the rework made Emrek the clear frontrunner in the race for 1.3k, and it didn't even seem like it would take that long. He'd already gotten pretty close. For example, his Tsukinami 3-mod score only needed to be about 0.5% better accuracy to be 1.3k. Well, that is, until November 9th, when everything would be flipped on its head. The general PP rework was released, and it included sweeping changes to aim and speed calculation. Essentially, difficult angles were buffed a lot, and very comfortable angles were nerfed a little bit. That little bit is really important though. It caused Emrek to lose both of his 1.2ks, and it caused most aim players to lose some PP. On the other hand, speed got buffed a decent amount, because finger control became a factor in the system. The importance of this change really can't be overstated, because it was what pushed the game into a new meta. Before 2021, aim maps with massive difficulty spikes were essentially the only way to farm, but consistency was buffed with multiple reworks, And so was speed. And so slowly those forms of play became more viable. This change made comfortable aim even weaker, and speed even stronger. And it pushed speed over the tipping point to becoming almost necessary for every top player. This is why we recently started seeing a lot more purpose-made speed farm maps, and a much larger part of the top 100 playing speed. For the PP record, this change meant two things going forward. First, that 1.3k was farther away than ever, since there was once again not a single 1.2k play. And second was that when 1.3k was set, it was probably going to be on a specific type of map. A map that had difficult aim and speed spread across a decently long run of time. This is reflected in what became the PP record after the change, since MREC's 1.1k on Stellar Reunion fits all of this criteria. This play would remain the record for almost a year, during which a lot would change. Whitecat stopped farming altogether, Marami quit, and because of their inactivity, MREC was able to get far ahead of the competition. In 11 months, he widened the first place gap by over 1,000 PP, reaching 22,000 PP before anyone else had even reached 20,000. Despite this, he still couldn't break the PP record again. That is, until a certain map came out. If you followed the game at all, it's probably a pretty familiar name, since the map broke the PP system so bad that it was the most common top play among 4 digits, and at one point it was getting 150,000 plays a day. Zana. By the time MREC got his 1,241 PP play on the map, there was already a plan to nerf it. But this nerf wouldn't come immediately, and in that time, another player would start vying for the PP record. Kalanlu. Kalanlu is a fascinating player because despite being ranked 2,000, he had already achieved 2 1,000 PP plays. He was the second person to FC the Unforgiving with Flashlight for 1,011 PP, and the first to FC This Place Will Grow with Easy, Halftime, and Flashlight for 1,045 PP. After both of these plays though, he set his sights on Because Maybe Part 3, with Easy, Halftime, and Flashlight. This is exceptionally ambitious, because Maybe Part 3 is half a star harder than This Place Will Grow, and has more objects, which is super important for Flashlight PP. All of this meant that an FC on Because Maybe would be worth over 1,300 PP. His first pass on the map was an 117 miss with 94% accuracy, but within 2 weeks he had gotten a 99% 19 miss. And by 2 weeks after, he'd gotten a 1 miss 99.95% play. Sadly, he missed right in the middle of the map, which made the play only worth 500 PP. Over the next month, he would keep playing the map, and by this point it was obvious that he could pull it off. It just came down to getting lucky enough to get the full 7,000 combo. And eventually, he did get that run. His play on the map was worth 1,253 PP. This play is immensely impressive, but almost everyone recognized how overweighted it was as well. Kalanlu said himself that the map should only be worth 700 PP, and while he had been grinding the map, a Flashlight nerf had already started to be integrated into the Zonai nerf. 2 months of Kalanlu's 1.2k and MREC's Zonai 2k, both plays were nerfed into the ground. And part of this was because there was a very welcome Flashlight rework by MB Masher that made Flashlight into its own separate skill, and by doing so addressed all of the problems with the mod that I've laid out throughout this video. After the PP rework, MREC's Team Magma SS became the new PP record, and interestingly enough, it was actually worth 1.2k now. And that wasn't all, since after the rework, MREC had a total of 4, while everyone else had 0. After this change, the gap between him and the number 2 player Lifeline was 3,175 PP. It was obvious by this point that MREC would be the one to achieve the first 1,300 PP play. But it still didn't seem simple. His top play was still only 1,215, and it hadn't remained his top play for lack of effort either, since he'd done a ton of farming, gotten many 1.1ks and 1.2ks. It's just that once he got past 1,200 PP, he seemed to hit a wall. Because of this, it seemed that while yes, Emmerich was the only person capable of a 1300 pp score, it was going to take some time. At this point, it had been 950 days since the first 1.2k, but it felt like only minimal progress had been made towards 1.3k. And then, something happened. Wooding. The Wooding keyboard, aka God's blessing to Osukai. It's special because of a function called rapid tree, where you could set any part of a key press to activate a key and reset it. This drastically lowers the amount of movement needed to play speed. It had been used by a few speed players for months, but it only got to Emmerich at the start of November. The next day he started a play session, and it was immediately obvious that something was different. He was able to get a DTFC on I Bet You'll Forget Even If You Noticed, which has streams like this. And he got a Save Me run where he hit the diff spike. After he finished the session, he made a tweet saying, "The Wooding keyboard is literally game breaking. I don't know why so many people say it barely does anything. I can literally death stream 300 now." No boy, did we have no idea how true that was. Because within just days of obtaining the keyboard, Osu history would be made.
Oh my god, how much is that? Oh my fucking god! What the f-
Emmerich would finally break the 1300 pp barrier on November 2nd, 2022, with his Save Me DT Formus. The score is just unfathomable. 285 BPM streams for 7 minutes with multiple death streams, and of course, after 7 minutes of playing, a space diff spike. It's a play that would have been unimaginable months, weeks, probably days before it happened. And that's where I plan to end the video. But things have happened. But this video is already really long, so let's just speedrun the rest. A few weeks after Save Me DT, Murami got his hands on the Wooding, and I think the comments sum up people's reactions pretty well. Less than a day later, he started gambling on Ascension to Heaven, and with the Wooding on his side, he was able to get absurd accuracy, maybe even high enough to set the PP record. He played the map for hours, and at the end of the day, he got a run that would have been a PP record without the miss at the end. At this point, he could have quit, but he knew better. He knew that 90% of gamblers quit before they win big. And after a few more hours of attempts, he was able to become the 10%. Now, of course, Emmerich could not just let that slide, so he began playing again, now fully accustomed to the Wooding. And just days after Murami's play, he pulled off one of the most absurd scores the game has ever seen. And this is where the record stands today. So, at the end of this journey, there are a few questions still left to answer. First, why did it take so long? Well, it was almost certainly the fault of the absurd amount of PP changes that took place. Like, for example, between 900 and 1000 PP, there was one rework. Between 1000 and 1.2k, there was not a single rework. Between 1200 and 1300, there were 5. Each making it hard to exploit the PP system, and by extension making it hard to achieve the PP record. Another factor was how weak of a foundation most 1.2Ks had, since up until Emmerich, all of them got most of their PP from memorization, and not technical skill. The other question is, should it have happened yet? There's a serious case to be made that the 1300 PP barrier wasn't broken by players pushing through skill caps, but instead by a few buying a keyboard. Here's the MREX Osu track before and after the wooting. I think the wooting kind of created a perfect storm, since after speed had been buffed over and over, a tool came out that made it easier. Now the top 5 highest PV plays are all speed based, and 4 of the top 5 players use the wooting. The consensus from speed players seems to be that the wooting definitely helps with playing speed, but it won't give magical skill to bad players. And it helps the most when someone already has great speed, but just doesn't have the technique to use it. So it may be that AIM players like MREC and Lifeline are just unlocking latent speed abilities that have been there all along. That's why I don't think we'll ever have a definitive answer to whether 1.3k should have happened. At the end of the day though, what has been done by MREC and Marami cannot be understated. Marami reached unimaginable levels of speed mastery, and despite almost every other speed player having a wooting at this point, he is still the only player to have gotten above 70% AC on Ascension to Heaven 3 mod, and he got a 96%. Emmerich has redefined what constitutes a well-rounded player, to the point where, with a bit more speed practice, he could become the real Marami cat. At this point, he's also single-handedly pushed Osu into a new era, where 1.1ks are common, and at least when he plays, so are 1.2ks. And I think that's pretty cool.